Okay, so now we are speaking with Dr. Derek Burkholder. Derek and I actually worked together on a project, and we first met out in Western Australia, and we were working in an area called Shark Bay. Derek was on the project because he is a world tiger shark expert, and we'd never been there before and thought we needed someone that might be able to haul what was left of our carcass out of the ocean if things went totally wrong. Derek now works in Florida, so I thought we'd start off with, okay, so Derek, if you want to just explain a little bit about who you are, what your position is, and what you do.
All right. Well, thank you very much for letting me come chat today. I actually kind of wear a lot of different hats. So I'm a research scientist at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But there I actually work with a couple of different research groups. So I work with the Guy Harvey Research Institute, and I have a shark tagging research program that's sort of paired with an education and outreach program as well. So every trip that we go out, we bring a group of people with us, mostly students, middle school, high school classrooms will come out on the boat to be hands-on and working with the sharks as we're doing our research. And I'm also the director of the Broward County Sea Turtle Conservation Program. So Florida is a major nesting habitat for sea turtles, and we've got about 24 miles of beach for Broward County. And so I've got an army of students and staff that will go out for 8 months of the year, and they monitor those beaches. And we're just looking to see kind of what's come in overnight, what new nests have been laid. We mark off the nest to protect them throughout their incubation, those kinds of things. And then the last job is I am the director of the Marine Environmental Education Center at the Carpenter House here in Hollywood, Florida. So that's actually where I'm sitting right now. I'm in our education room. So you see a lot of our specimens, the carapaces, skulls, things like that we use for our different education programs. And this center is actually kind of a unique spot for me and for the university, because it's a partnership between the Broward County Parks Department and the university. We've got a sea turtle in the family's old swimming pool outside for people to take a look at. And we've got they've had a little beach house that we've turned into an interpretive center where we've got a whole bunch of exhibits and displays.
So one of the things that I think some of our students are interested in is you obviously started off you did a PhD and things like that, but how did you get from sort of doing a PhD into and working in, being an academic student into where you are now?
Yeah, so the position that I've got now has sort of evolved over the years since I've come to Nova. I actually started at Nova as a postdoc position after I finished my dissertation, and that was working with the shark program here and with the Guy Harvey Research Institute. And because that program ended up taking on a lot of the education components and really reaching out to students and working with local schools and things like that. Because of my history and with my PhD research, I was working with both sharks and sea turtles. And so for me, the turtle side of things came on because the previous principal investigator in the program was retiring, and it was a long-term, about 25-year long program that had nobody to run it. So I was able to sort of take on that project just as something to add to what I was currently doing. Education and outreach has always been a big part of what I have done. I do a lot of school visits and talking to students and bringing groups in because I think it's very important to be able to share the science that the things we're learning about with a larger audience that aren't looking in scientific journals. And so that's what I've always been very passionate about. And so I've just been very lucky to be able to sort of meld those things together. And really, for me, it ended up kind of shaping my position here at NSU over the years as these different projects have come on. And it's been an interesting road, but it has allowed me to really build a position here at the university.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not originally from Florida, are you?
No, I'm from Michigan originally. So.
Okay, so how did you then get from landlocked Michigan in the Great Lakes to becoming a sort of shark and turtle expert?
Yep. So I actually went to a small liberal arts school called Albion College in Michigan. And there, we were a school of 1,600 people, very small. But one of the professors there, Dr. Jeff Carrier, has been doing nurse shark reproduction research in the Florida Keys for the last 30 years or so. And so when I started at Albion, I'd always had a love for the ocean, love for, the marine world. And like you said, for Michigan, never really thought it was going to be something I worked in. But when I got to Albion, I learned about Jeff and his research program. I sort of kind of latched onto him and bugged him enough till he took me on some trips and got on some research projects. And, from there, it was really kind of meeting people. And, it was on one of the trips with Jeff to the Dry Tortugas to study nurse shark reproduction. And there was a group from National Geographic that was on the trip with us. They were filming Critter Cam, which is they had a film series where they were putting cameras on the backs of sharks and sea turtles and whales and all kinds of stuff all around the world. And they were there filming the Large Sharks episode. I was able to kind of hide out with them, work with them on the boat, and they actually invited me to do an internship at National Geographic in DC. So I ended up spending that following summer in DC working with that crew before I finished up at Albion. And during that time, I was able to meet a number of different people. And Jeff's research partner, Wes Pratt, was working at Mote Marine Lab at the time. So once I finished up at Albion, I actually got a job with him at Mote Marine in Florida Keys for a year, and sort of ran a shark research program down there for a year before I started up my PhD at Florida International University.
Oh, wow. So good.
And that was actually tied in again with Mike Heithaus, who ended up being a major advisor at FIU, was the host of that Critter Cam series. So I met at Geographic and with that Critter Cam crew that was out on that first trip. And, over that internship summer, we kind of worked together and put a project ideas together. And he was lucky enough to get it funded through the National Science Foundation. And when I finished up there, and finished up at Mote, I went to FIU and we started projects. So
yeah. And just to give FIU's Florida International University. Okay, so what is the one thing that you now know that you wish you'd learned as a student?
I wish that I knew how important computer programming was going to be in my life. And so I highly recommend taking any courses you can find in R programming, in GIS, global information systems, mapping systems. Any sort of computer program that you can take now is going to only benefit you in this world going forward, because everything's gone that way as far as data analysis. All of those things are really based around a lot of this computer programming that I am terrible at. And it's something that I've known when I was still in school and could have easily taken many courses in it. But that's one thing that, for me, if I could do it over, I would spend a lot more time learning those things when I was a student.
To reiterate what Derek is saying, that's the one thing I did get good at. Like, I would consider you're much more of the classic sort of salty sea dog running around doing that.
Absolutely.
I am the bookish desk nerd. and I would say that, I got good at computer programming, and the amount of opportunities that has opened up into things that I am, to be frank, wildly unqualified for, but still getting asked to do. That's how we ended up on the trip together. Because the person who's like, this is the guy who's going to analyze the data. We should probably take him out, even though he's terrible at driving a boat. Well, I'm not too bad at free diving now, but so even though it seems like a really weird skill to learn when you want to be, it's the doors that it opens is really cool. So thanks for bringing that up.
It's huge.
And it's great to hear somebody who is what I would call a quintessential field biologist. There's a lot of saying, okay, the one thing you need to learn is the dog.
Yeah. Believe me, it's going to help.
Okay, and then related to that, so in your career generally, especially early on, what was the best piece of advice you'd say you were ever given?
It's kind of twofold. It's the best piece of advice I was given is to take advantage of any opportunities that come up. Whether if it's going to cost you money, figure out a way to make it happen if at all possible, because that's the reason I'm where I am right now, is because I took advantage of those opportunities to go on those research trips, to work with a professor in a lab, to, no matter what it is, even if it's, helping out a graduate student on another project in the lab, or, volunteering your time or taking an internship, any of these kinds of things. The reason I am where I am right now is because of the people that I met along the way that helped me get to the next step. And, it's been very little true, kind of interviewing for a position. It was, my position, my postdoc position at NSU. My advisor at NSU had contacted Dr. Mike Heithaus and said, "Hey, I'm looking to start this program. Do you know anybody?" And he said, "Talk to Derek." And so I picked up the phone and I ended up there, so it's, for me, those connections and those, opportunities, anything that you can take advantage of, for me is the best piece of advice I was ever given. Is to,
because I think something that you hit on there a little bit is the fact that doing these opportunities and taking these things that sometimes initially you're like, well, what do I stand to benefit out of that?
Right.
And it is the fact that the networks start to become huge.
Right.
And because a lot of science, like you think about the biological sciences, you think about the natural sciences, and it sounds like this enormous field, but it's actually very siloed indeed.
Yeah, very small.
And everybody that works in a particular area knows everybody else that works in that. And so often when it comes to when people do have vacancies going, they will just contact around their network, and legally you have to put out an advert.
Right.
But it's not just a recommendation letter. If they can phone up someone they also consider a friend or they've worked with and say, okay, I need someone that can do this. And like, okay, exactly what skills do you need? And I can tell you of my group, which is the person that will fit it best.
Absolutely.
And that level of, I think, connectivity is huge. Like the fact that, the project that we went out on, we contacted you because you'd worked with Mike Heithaus. Yep. The head of that project had spoken to because we might be able to use their resources. And you went out with Mike Heithaus. And now subsequently in that same group, there's like people like Al Harborn who you'd worked with. We'd also worked with him in a different part of Australia and worked in the same lab group. And so it's so interconnected that if you can just get your name known in those areas, it becomes huge. Yeah. And part of that, as you say, is anytime you see any opportunity at all, you have nothing to lose. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One thing I kind of wanted to ask you sort of more specifically is you have what is quite a niche job, and for a lot of people would consider it almost a dream position, like chasing after sharks and doing stuff. Were you ever told by people at any point, okay, you give this up, go do something else, it's too difficult, competition's too hard, or even the position you're after doesn't exist? And if so, how did you take that information on board, or how did you overcome it? That's something I heard a lot about the marine world in general, is that it's incredibly, the competition is incredibly high. There's no jobs. There's nothing you're going to be able to do with it. I heard that coming up to grad school. While I was in grad school, people were still asking me those same questions. Well, what are you going to do with this? Isn't there no jobs? For me, that made me just kind of buckle down more and work and make sure that the work that I was putting out was of high quality, so that, and again, I made sure to keep those good relationships with the people I'd met along the way and built that network so that when I was ready to enter the job market, that I did have that, network of people that were kind of keeping an eye out for me and helping me to that next step. So it was something that I took almost as not really as a challenge, but something that, I heard it, but it just helped me rededicate and refocus and make sure that what I was doing was of a high quality and something that, would hopefully help me get to the next step. Okay, back onto what you're actually doing now. So what is it that you really love about what you're doing now?
Well, like you said, it is a dream job, right? I get to spend in the field. So I absolutely love that part, that I get to spend in the field working with sharks, working with sea turtles. But, one of the things that I really love about this position, I get to work with a large number of students. It's not just the students in my lab, but I have, on their beach program, I've got 40 staff members over the course of the season that I get to interact with. So for me, it's a great way to really engage with the students here at Nova Southeastern University. And then, one of the things I absolutely love is the education center and being able to work with the public, and especially school students and things like that. And the same thing with the shark tagging program. We'll bring 30 kids on board the boat for a day of tagging sharks. Some of these kids, many of these kids are from South Florida. They live half an hour max from the beach, and a lot of these kids have never been to the ocean, certainly never been on a boat before. And so when you're leaving the dock, people are terrified to even get on the boat, and then you're having them tag a shark or, measure a shark at the back of the boat. And it's just very cool to see sort of how people get excited, and you can really sort of see perceptions change literally over the course of a day. People are terrified of sharks getting on the boat, and then, halfway through the day, they catch a shark and they're calling it Nyla because it looks, because it's beautiful like a flower. That was one of the girls when she named a shark. And so it's just, you can see these perceptions flip, in the course of a few hours by getting people out and seeing them and seeing these animals up close. And that's something that I really love about this position, be able to work with so many different people.
Okay, that's good. And then on the flip side, what is your least favorite part of what you're doing now?
That is certainly going to be the administrative side of things. Like I think pretty much all of us. For those 10 days in the field, I've got 40 days in the office, crunching the data, writing the grants, trying to get the money to continue doing that work, and those sorts of things. So it's really and I think, like I said, I think that's the same for a lot of people. We love the fun stuff, but the fun stuff comes with the hard sitting in front of a computer, paperwork stuff. Yeah. So it's all part of the gig. So you kind of take the good with the bad, or the hard with the fun, I guess. And but yeah, that's certainly, I like being on the boat and playing with sharks and the turtles, and less the writing the grants and things like that.
This is something that I've spoken with my students about. One of my big field projects at the minute is for the last few years, I have a field site down in Costa Rica where we do a whole bunch of stuff out in the forest. And I think the perception of what we actually do a lot of the time is totally skewed by the fact that part of your job is an incredibly photogenic experience. Like, you're outside, you're somewhere beautiful, the sun's shining, you're out on a boat, there's big charismatic animals swimming about the place. So you take loads of pictures of that. Whereas if it was actually a representation of what you do on a day-to-day basis, for every one picture of that, you should have 4 pictures of you sitting at a desk.
Yep, doing this.
Or with a full light.
Yeah, that's the one right there.
And I think, well, that's, Derek, so thank you again for your time. It's great to see you again. Great to have you aboard. And hope to catch up soon.
Absolutely.